Y'all ready down there? I call this December 16th, 2024 meeting of the Newberry County Board of Trustees to order. We have a quorum present this evening with all members present. Mr. Presley, do we have any amendments to our agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, we have one amendment under personnel matters for executive session. We have to add GCC policy. We have
GCC?
GCC. And it's a personnel matter.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to move into executive session to discuss personnel resignations, recommendations, personnel matters, policy GBE, GBEB, and now GCC, and contractual considerations, the Newberry Elementary School fire alarm and Whitmire Community School tennis courts?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll be back. We return to open session. Ms. Timpson, would you lead us in our invocation, please?
Glad to. Our Father which art in heaven, as we gather here tonight on behalf of the students, faculty members, and others that work in this district, we're very grateful to Thee, especially for this season that we're in, commemorating the birth of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. We ask Thee at this time to especially bless those who have been harmed this day in an educational setting once again, and we ask for Thy peace to be upon those who are affected by that. We also ask at this time that we might be able to make wise decisions that will affect the educational experiences for our students in this district so that we might push them forward. Again, we thank Thee for all that work in this district. And we say these things most humbly in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'd like to welcome all of you that are here with us this evening, and I would like to apologize for us being a little late coming out of the executive session. We appreciate you being out here waiting on us. We also would like to recognize our media that are watching us, I believe, online. And now, is there any action from executive session?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the administration's recommendation for hiring.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Madam Chair, I also move that we grant a 90-day extension of medical leave to employee A.
I second.
Mr. Bosso?
Sorry.
Didn't we mean to say leave to the end of the school year instead of the 90 days?
Yes.
I believe.
I'm unclear on that. I thought the FMLA might run into the next calendar year.
Not from what Ms. Ware said. I think we were granting it to cover to the end of the school year.
Is that safer, Dr. Ware?
Well, FMLA will run out after 60 days anyway. And so the leave approval is for anything beyond 90. And that's what you have to vote on for whatever you approve the leave for that employee beyond the 90th day.
And if I'm correct, Ms., or Dr. Ware, that we had said that we would just extend it through the remainder of the school year.
That was part of your discussion.
Yes.
Okay. Then I changed the motion to mean that we would grant an extension of medical leave until the end of the school year.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we don't have any special recognition this evening,
We
or do we?
do.
We do? Okay.
We have some students with us from the Career Center, and I'm going to have Ms. Holliday to come up.
Okay.
Yeah, come on up, Ms. Holliday. Tell us what our students have brought for our board members this evening.
Students wanted to tell you themselves.
Okay. We'll put them on the spot.
They are prepared.
All right.
Those are beautiful.
Beautiful, aren't they beautiful?
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Look, they are really beautiful. They are, they're like, wow.
I'm Emma Duffin, the president of our Activity Chapter, and this is Francis Newman, our reporter. And we just say thank you so much for your support, and we appreciate the support of this. We hope to have Merry Christmas.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
Thank you so much.
Wow. They're beautiful.
They are. Some so throw dirt at us, others throw flowers. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
And I don't believe we had anyone sign up for public forum this evening. So Without objection, the November 18th, 2024 board meeting minutes will be approved. Ms. Lake, do you have a legislative update this evening?
No, they are just now starting to meet and get into their committee, so by the time that we meet again next month, I should have a little bit of update to what they're going to be putting forth.
Okay. All right, we move to our action items. Ms. Dowd with our audit report.
Madam Chair, Mr. Presley, and members of the board, we have with us tonight Mr. David Phillips, who is a partner with our audit firm, Green Finney Colley, who is going to present to us our June 30th, 2024 financial report.
All right, I'll hopefully keep this short and maybe sweet, because that's probably what you would prefer. But if you don't mind, instead of us trying to go through probably the big book that you see that goes out, that would probably kill us if we tried to go through that. We try to truncate it and put it all the kind of the highlights in a quick PowerPoint. So if you don't mind, we will go through the PowerPoint, but if you have questions as I go through, please feel free to interject, or if you want to wait to the end, that will work as well. All right, well, we like to always remind everybody of the importance of internal controls. We want to make sure that there's checks and balances within an organization so that one person can't do it all. And so one of the things that we do as your auditors is we try to kick those tires and look at some of those significant internal control processes, and we want to make sure that there's good checks and balances. And if there's not, it's important that I talk to Susan about it and Dr. Presley about it, but it's also important that you know about it as a board, because you can't fix it if you don't know it's broken. So again, that's one of the things we're doing. These are your financial statements, so that when we go to the next slide, our responsibility is to issue an opinion. We look at things from a materiality perspective, and the very last kind of bullet point there, you have an unmodified opinion. I know that's a strange term, but that's a clean opinion. If we had to modify our report, we would say everything looks good except for debt, or everything looks good except for cash. You don't want one of those. And so again, we're not aware of anything that needs to be modified in our report. All right, well, let's look at the fund balance. I know that that's probably one of the key things that everybody likes to make sure that they're tracking. Your total fund balance remained at about $26.7 million. The unassigned, which means there's no constraints on it, was approximately 25.2%, which is about 36% of your 2024 actual expenditures, and that would be about 35% of your 2025 budgeted expenditures. So why do you want to have a good fund balance? Well, remember, there's some of your revenues, particularly your real property taxes, they kind of come in at all one time. Think about it, you personally. You usually get your real property tax invoice probably in October. You pay it in December if you want the tax deduction in that year. Otherwise, you pay it in January before it become due on January 15th. But really, all the real property taxes are kind of collected in a couple months. And that kitty grows, and then it begins to unwind itself as your costs continue the rest of the year. That fund balance ebbs downward. And then it ratchets back up after year around October when the bills go back out again. So remember, it helps kind of weather some of those storms. Remember also, if emergencies come up or there's unanticipated expenditures, you have flexibility to respond if you have money in the bank. If you have to run down and get a loan, you don't have as many options. It also helps you if you need to issue debt. They're going to see that, hey, I'm going to give you a better rate if you have a good, strong fund balance than somebody that's up and down and all around. And again, we live in uncertain economic times. We don't know what the state funding might be like. So there's other reasons why you want to make sure you keep some cushion to kind of protect you against these ebbs and flows of life. All right, well, let's look at your revenues. Your total revenues were $64.6 million. They increased about 5% over the prior year. Some of that coming in property taxes. A lot of that's still coming in from some of those state sources, the aid to classrooms and so forth. But one of the things that we've seen over the last 2 years is investment earnings. They've been coming in really strong because interest rates are closer to the 5% mark. And that probably won't last, but that's really generated some extra revenue for a lot of our school districts these last 2 years. As it relates to your budget, you came in about $400,000 over budget. And I did want to mention, remember, some of that state aid to classrooms, it comes into your EIA fund, and then it gets transferred over to your general fund. So that last note on the bottom is to remind you that some of that state aid to classroom doesn't come in as revenues immediately in the general fund. It comes in as a revenue over there in the EIA fund, and then it gets transferred over. All right, well, let's look at your expenditures. The expenditures were about $70.3 million, an increase of about $7.1 million or 11% over the prior year. You know, you're a people business. So if your costs are going up, it's probably salaries and benefits. I mean, that's such a large piece of it. So if you look at that bullet point there in the middle, talking about the salary and benefit increases, that's the driver. You had a 3% step increase along with an additional 3.5% increase in teacher salaries, a COLA, and unfortunately, benefit costs keep going up pretty much every year. You came in slightly over budget, but that was primarily due to some capital outlay that needed to be done.
So David, I want to
Yes.
stop you just a minute. The primary use of the budget for me is when we get into a budget work session for next year. So this year, we projected, or we actually received $64 million in revenue, and we spent $70 million. And you laid it out here, it's recurring cost. It's going to be
Right.
for personnel. So is that 500 or 600,000 going to always be available, or is
Oh,
it?
this 5.7 million down here?
Right.
Yeah, right now, that's the way the new funding formula is working.
Okay.
And so that keeps going up. It's an allocation every year, and that should continue unless they change the funding formula on the state level.
So how do we know that when we're budgeting?
Well, they provide a lot of this information by people and so forth, but
Yeah, I mean, we will get projections as we go along in the budget process, just like we always have.
Okay.
So that's basically the main way that we know is how the legislative process progresses, so that we know what, what they are expecting for teacher salary increases, or what they're expecting from RFA for additional revenue within the state, what they look at as far as recurring and non-recurring expenditures for the state, and how that's going to get passed down to the request by the Department of Ed and other areas that are needs. So as they go through that budget process, I will share that with you all, as I always do.
And it seems muddy sometimes. They start one way and move around.
that's correct.
And
It
Or
does.
parts of Congress don't always agree.
In a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
Of what, certain contingencies might want them to look at.
Okay.
It can slow down, the process can slow down.
All right, well, next slide here, we're going to just briefly look at your special revenue fund and your special revenue EIA fund. Remember, these funds are really kind of set aside for a lot of federal, state, and local grant programs, that the monies are pretty much restricted for special programs there. And so you expended about $16.1 million in those programs. Remember, a lot of these programs don't have fund balance. So you get it, the revenue, you either spend it or you defer it. But remember, a couple years ago, we used to show the student activity funds in a separate fiduciary fund. Well, the GASB wanted those moved back into, in essence, it made us move them back into the special revenue fund. So remember, inside of this special revenue fund, there's about $2 million pupil student activity funds that are restricted for those activities. In the past, those wouldn't have been there, but they are now. You also have another special revenue fund, the food service fund. It had a slight increase in fund balance of about $200,000, bringing you to an ending fund balance of about $4 million there. All right, well, let's look at your capital projects fund. You had a slight decrease in fund balance of about $200,000, leaving you about $5.6 million in restricted fund balance. You expended about $5.4 million for capital projects. We kind of list what some of those items were: HVAC projects at Mid Carolina Middle School, other project at some of the other schools as well with roof replacements. And so again, those were some of the projects that were worked on this year. The debt service funds, you had a slight increase in fund balance of about $100,000 to $3.7 million. Just remember, those monies are restricted for debt service. They're just not for any other purpose. That's what they have to be used for, because that's helping cover all those your debt service, your mortgage payments on your debt each year.
So,
Yes.
Ms. Dow might answer this, is that the 53 mills that we collect every year? That goes, okay.
All right, so did want to remind you, remember when you do issue bonds and so forth, it's kind of like the note or the loan that you have on your house. You've got to make your mortgage payment, right? And so the total payments that you made on your short and long-term debt was about $33.4 million. This was a decrease in the overall balance of the liability of about $3 million. But the last bullet point there is key. That's your mortgage payment for fiscal year 25. And so that number is about $6.3 million. And again, if you keep making that payment over time, eventually you'll pay it all off. And so again, it's just like on your mortgage, that's your debt service that you have to cover each year. All right, wanted to just remind you that you participate in the state pension retirement plan. That's a pretty big liability. So how this works is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, they took the position that even though you don't have your own retirement plan, if you participate in a cost-sharing plan, that you should record your proportionate piece of that asset or liability on your books. And so back in 2015, this started, and your allocation is about $77.9 million. Now, how they calculate that is they look at your PIBA contributions as a percentage of the total PIBA contributions in the state. And whatever that little percentage is, they apply that to the $22-some billion liability, and your percentage is about $77.9 million. Now, the real takeaway there is that they're not going to ask you to write them a check for $77.9. Nobody could do that or couldn't afford that. The real takeaway is the second to the last bullet point is that they're raising rates of what you have to pay in. And so that, remember, has been going up 1% over the last 5 to 6 years. We finally reached the final 1% scheduled rate increase in fiscal year 24. So it's not going up in 25. Right now at least. And if you look at those rates, 18.56, 21.24, but what that doesn't show you too is that your employee is also contributing over 9% too. And so you think about that, that's 27 to 30 cents on every dollar is going to the state to try to shore up that pension plan. The hope is that in time that plan will get better funded, and then they can lower that PIBA contribution that you're having to make each year. That rate will hopefully go down. Time will tell if that works. Now, also, you participate in a retiree health insurance, OPEB plan. That liability is about 51.6 versus 64.3. This plan is really, really poorly funded. If you look at that third to last bullet point, there's 11 cents on every dollar is all it has available to pay claims one day. And so what I think is really going to happen is that second to last bullet point, that rate is going to start being ratcheted up over the next couple years. So they stopped the PIBA 1% rate. I think what you're going to see is the rate increase start hitting here because they've got to shore up that plan too because it's even more poorly funded than the retirement plans. All right, well, just wanted to mention, there is one change in accounting principle that will kick in next year. It's about compensated absences, and we'll be working with Susan and her staff on it. But again, it's just to kind of fine tune. They want you to make sure you accrue what you ultimately think you're going to have to pay out on people's leave and so forth. We looked at, on the compliance side, every year we have to look at some single audit programs. We looked at Title I and the ESSER program. We did not have any findings. The management letter, which is a little side letter that she probably sent out to you as well, we always like to just remind everybody that there's always risk with pupil activity funds. Even you can do everything perfect, but I still say about once every 3 to 5 years, probably something's going to hit the fan. Unless you're really willing to, we're going to go hire 2 or 3 bookkeepers for every school. And think about the cost of that versus maybe once every 3 to 5 years, $10,000 disappeared. You've got to sit back and look at those cost benefits. But we feel like the structure that you have in your program is very reasonable and very consistent with a lot of the other school districts. It's just certain risks you have to be willing to live with. All right, last slide, our summary. Remember, unmodified, that's a good thing. That's clean. You really have a strong financial condition. Remember, ESSER's going away, and there's some of those costs, not a lot, but they're going to probably roll back into your general fund for some of those teacher costs. And the staff here, I used to be on this audit. This was not my audit this year. I'm filling in for a colleague. But they've always been great to work with. I always get mad because he stole Newberry from me. And my dad was a pastor in Newberry at Smyrna Presbyterian Church many, many years ago. Any questions? I know I'll go kind of quick. Yes.
Go ahead, Ike.
No, you
All right, this is just a general question, not really related to anything specific on your slides. But I'm just curious, on one of the slides, slide 5, you mentioned the potential for better interest rates on debt issues with a fund balance. Is there a point where that benefit maxes out for a fund balance? For example, if we have a fund balance of 25 million, it's going to do us no better in terms of interest rates if we had a fund balance of 30 million.
That is true. I mean, there's a certain place, if you get the highest rating, it doesn't matter if you have more fund balance, you can't go any higher. And vice versa. And it's kind of a balancing act because you sure don't want to keep too much because that means that's some of your citizens' money just sitting there, but you also don't want to have enough and be too short or have too much. So you're trying to balance that all the time. Yeah.
So when the state hit us a few years back having to take responsibility or liability for the pension, they said it won't affect you, you don't have to worry about it. But of course, what it affected us was it cost the district more every year.
Correct.
And so now you're telling me that we've got to take some changes in accounting for compensated absences. Will that be something that we'll do in-house? As a district, or is it?
That's just going to be actually a reporting.
Yeah, it doesn't affect your general fund. Yeah.
How will we know to quantify that, or what kind of number?
It's an estimate.
Okay.
Correct. They want you to estimate what do you think people will ultimately use of their PTO or their leave balance. Yeah.
It's really not going to affect.
No.
It's going to be a note to the financial statements.
Right.
It's not going to affect our statements.
But he said they'll probably increase our rate to that fund.
Well,
because
I think that was the retiree health insurance. Was that what? Yeah, that one I expect they're going to start raising that rate up. Yes, sir.
And we've noticed that some in budget, as insurance premiums, that's basically
Okay.
how we would see that.
Okay. Good.
Any questions?
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And this is an action item.
Oh, yes, it is. Excuse me. It
We
sure
will
is.
need to,
All right, do I have a motion to accept the audit report?
I so move.
Do you have a second?
I second.
All those in
Discussion.
favor? Are we in discussion?
I'd just like to thank Ms. Dowd again. I mean, we start pulling our hair out at budget time, and you always guide us through it, and then we come back with these audits that are always clear, and we come and take it for granted, but I don't want for you to ever think we take it for granted. I know you do a lot of work, and I really appreciate it.
We have a very good staff, good people to work with. Thank you.
Yeah, I ditto that.
Yeah.
All those in favor, I think we,
Aye.
Aye.
No, Mr. Earl.
Mr. Earl.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Presley, I come before you for a second reading of policy JICJ, that is prohibition of personal electronic devices during the school day. Formerly, the policy was possession, use of electronic communication devices in school. This is for second reading this evening, and it should be a part of your board packet of information.
Mr. Earl, I can't wait to get it started. How soon can we start it? Gonna be the first of the year?
Yes, sir. We were looking at full implementation in January. We do want to, one step at a time in terms of getting the full policy approved this evening.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept this as a second reading, the prohibition of personal electronic devices during the school day.
I've seen it at home.
I have discussion. Does that happen after?
Do we have a second to Mr.
Second.
West's motion?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Yeah, I do. At the conference that we went to, and I know that we had talked with Mr. Presley about the, is it Free to Focus pamphlets? And then also possibility of some signs that will go up on our campuses to kind of alert parents so that they have kind of a head start. And then I'm assuming that as this policy is put in place, that we'll gauge how it works. And then if we need to reevaluate, then we'll reevaluate.
Yes, ma'am. So right now, the current plan is implementation in January.
Okay.
We have some schools that have elected to just keep the phone or any electronic device on their person, keep it secure. We have some schools that have elected to implement lockers for cell phone storage. So we're going to monitor it after it's implemented in January and make any adjustments to it by the end of the school year.
And then I was looking at, and I know that our policy is a kind of a model policy, and it's come down from the State Department of Education, and then along with the School Boards Association model policy. And I was looking at other people's, and most other districts kind of are doing the same thing that we're doing, but there was a sentence in there that, in one of them that I read that I thought was very good, and so I'm just going to kind of read it out loud, but it ended in their policy. It just said, bringing a telecommunication device to school is a privilege. It's not a right. In that, so just, as we get ready to implement it, and as our principals do, that, hopefully all of our parents will get behind, and this will be a smooth transition. And, I know a lot of kids don't like the idea of it, and I know some of the parents don't, but, it goes back to, it's not a right to be able to bring it. It's been a privilege to been able to have it there.
You're absolutely correct. And Ms. Lake, I met with a group of students just last week. They're in favor of it. So they understand it's coming. I feel good of the reaction that I got from those students last week when we were talking about the cell phone and the fact that it was coming. They were all in favor of it.
Right, and I hadn't got to read the Free to Focus pamphlet, and you may have already, but, just the statement, of giving, being able to focus on, and hopefully it's a big relief for all you principals out there, and keep our fingers crossed that we won't have to do anything else, and that everybody will fall in line, kind of like dominoes.
So are you suggesting that we put that at the bottom of this policy, that one sentence? Because
Well-
I would go for that. I think that's just,
Well, I mean, that would be, whatever the board decides on that. It's just that, when I was reading it, it made me think about that we take so much for granted in what we start saying is our right to do things, and really, a telephone isn't a right, it was a privilege. So, I'll leave that to y'all, whether, if that's something you want to add or whatever, but mine was just more to remind everybody.
the question I have is about the smart devices. How do you stop a smartwatch from showing your text message? How would we monitor that, or do we say smartwatches? If the phone is off, the thing won't come through, okay. So it's not just stored, it's physically off, okay.
And some of the language that we already have in our code of conduct addresses a lot of things in terms of the use of electronic devices, refusal to obey at a minor level, refusal to obey at a major level. So those things are already in place in our code of conduct, so that's not anything shouldn't have to revamp and, as of right now as we implement the policy.
Well, I think too, I mean, if that should come up, and I think as principals begin to implement it, it's a small district and word just sort of filters around, so the first couple of students that test it out will probably be a test for the rest of y'all.
I think the thing that's going to be most important is that it is the same, no matter what school you go in, that you don't see these devices. And I know that in Part D, it says authorized for classroom use or other authorized reasons should be in writing and are not considered violations. And I would hope that that would be the exception to the rule. And that's something that we see all the time when saying, oh, just let them do so-and-so today. Because I can see that can be a problem.
And I think.
But it's got to be consistent from every teacher, every grade level. It's no electronics. I'm sorry, not electronics, I didn't say that right. No cell phone devices.
I think the major incentive, hopefully for all of us, is it's going to be tied to our funding. So we don't want our funding to be any more limited than what it is right now with all the mandatory things that we have to do and all the things that don't get fully funded.
One of the things the state superintendent said last weekend was that she wants to look at implementation data. She's looking forward to seeing the implementation data. So do we know what data points she's expecting to see?
I think what she's going to look at is suspension, out-of-school suspension, in-school suspension, any type of disciplinary data that coincides with the cell phones and the enforcement of this policy.
And as a district, we have an educator's handbook, and it provides the different infractions as well as the consequences for them. So this information as a district we'll be able to pull along with.
In the committee that was meeting, Mr. Earl has had a committee of principals. They've been looking at other districts and their information, their, I guess, pitfalls and warnings that they've given us, just things that we don't want to replicate. So they've been working pretty diligently on this one. So hopefully we'll have a product in the end that, we won't have to do too much modifying.
Well, other data that they also talked about last weekend, they were looking at the positive side of enforcing this prohibition of personal electronics, because they were seeing scores go up, attention spans go up, and a lot of times the bullying go way down. So that was part of it too, I think, from her, Hugh, with some of the others and what they said.
I think we'll really see the bullying go down.
And I
especially
actually,
at the
I'm sorry.
secondary level.
And I actually had some conversation with our committee members that were doing the soft rollout, and they mentioned the fact that they stopped allowing the students to use it at lunch, and the volume in the lunchroom got louder. It was because kids were talking more versus, being individualized. So that's something, it was good dialogue, you have to deal with the volume, but I think we'd rather deal with the volume than, things that come, negative impacts of a cell phone.
So are we planning to send out this Free to Focus pamphlet or whatever it is before this December break?
Yes.
Okay.
Will we get a copy?
Yes, you will get a copy of everything that we send out. We wait on you to approve the second reading, and Mr. Earl will get right on it first thing in the morning.
After we share with principal. The principal, put their eyes on it.
Any more discussion?
I read an article this week that said there had been a pretty intensive study somewhere, and mental health had improved by more socializing, where the students don't get their phones during lunch or during break, and they have to talk to others, and so I really like that part of it.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and if there's no more discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
We're started.
All right, so Mr. Earl, you have your assignment.
All right. Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Presley, tonight I'm presenting policy DDB, online fundraising campaigns for first reading. This policy is new policy to the district and provides some clear direction for our employees for online fundraising. In your board packet, I also included the online fundraising guidelines that are distributed and updated each year and given to our administrators at our administrative retreat.
On the one on the fundraising guidelines, again, just looking through other policies of other school districts, off the School Board Association website, Lexington too had one that was, just didn't seem to be quite as wordy, but actually had a lot of the same paragraphs. And the ones that approve online fundraising sites and the ones that are prohibited, that just like listing the three is, to me, I think I would rather see, or see it in there that not necessarily with just the prohibited, or either, put in more, but that it be okayed by your district office as it comes in, because there's a lot of fundraising sites other than those three that fall into that type of category. And so so that we don't misconstrue, just to maybe start those and then, do that, I don't know whether you do the ... but if there's something in there that says, that they have to come back to the principal or to the district office or their designee, for.
So if I understand what you're saying, you want to leave it open to let the principal or the district office approve any additional
Future.
Right.
fundraising sites?
Right. Yeah,
And they have been, and that.
there's dozens of them out there.
And so we had specifically approved the ones that were approved.
Right.
And we specifically told them these three could not be used.
Right.
However, they know that if there is another one that they're interested in, for instance, SnapRaise is one of the newer ones, that went through a vetting process.
Okay, so they're bringing everything to you
Yes,
as far as,
Yes.
because I know that stuff changes all the
It
time
does.
on social media. And, that was just kind of my concern.
And those guidelines wouldn't be included with the policy. Those guidelines
Right,
are
they're
what
just
we
the
have in
policy, kind of
finance,
like an
correct?
R.
Yes, ma'am.
So those guidelines, actually, you're not even going to be labeling them the DDBR?
No, we will, the policy DDB, that's on front. We will not do an administrative rule, those will stay as
Stay
guidelines.
with you. Gotcha.
Right, they're already in place and have been in
Okay.
place, so we wouldn't
makes
update that.
sense. That makes sense, okay.
Okay, I had that question as well. Okay, thank you.
Is there anything in this that would be prohibited to teachers going on Amazon and having a material list or supply list and asking people to send that? I can't find where it's directly prohibited, but would the principals approve that usually if a teacher just wanted to go on it personally and say, here's some things we need in the classroom?
I've seen those lists out there from our folks, and I've seen people go out and put that they've got 18 kids in their class, could you adopt one to provide a game?
I have to,
I don't think that goes through finance because that's that individual.
so nothing in here would affect that. Very good.
So that's okay. If they go on Facebook and say, I have 21 kids, I need blah, blah, blah. That's all right.
It's really not,
Well, you do it through the principal though, right? I mean, is the principal the one that's okay in that? Or, so
No.
the teachers can go do it?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Their personal Facebook.
Okay. All right.
And-
But now, we don't do that for like monetary donations. That's just like for
it's an
asking
item,
gifts
it's
and
an
items and that
item
kind of
on
stuff.
the list, exactly.
And what, we've had a teacher that, when you went for open house at the very beginning, they just had like a big poster, and you pulled a little card. It was like they, you provided tissue, or you provided, all those sheets that you laminate.
Right.
I use them
Okay,
at
I
home,
just-
but
I
I
didn't
think
know how
that,
that
anyway,
worked.
parents could just pull one if they wanted to, and you knew, hey, it's asking to, please bring 10 boxes of
Right.
tissue, or hand sanitizer, or whatever the supply was. And most parents are more than willing
Okay, well,
to
no, I
help.
mean, that
And that's what
that
we're
makes
talking about. They would
sense.
just do it on Amazon or something versus
Right.
like
On the door.
on the door, like old people like me like to see, yeah.
Yeah, because I
Okay.
had several teachers that asked me, and they said, then I'm in violation because I do this all the time. I get things from my classroom through Facebook and adopting certain children and such as that.
But
And-
you're not going through like a company,
Correct.
like
Right.
these are specific organizations.
They just want to make sure,
Right.
right?
So,
And then this just pertains really more to fundraising type of stuff than outfitting a particular classroom. Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept policy DDB, online fundraising campaigns for a first reading.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm also presenting policy KDC, district-sponsored information media. This would also be a new policy to the district and provides guidance for our websites and social media accounts.
Dr. Webb.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to maybe elaborate a little bit more on this policy, because,
So this policy just kind of protects us if in the event we post something, for example, on Facebook, and someone makes a comment that does not align with the vision, mission, and goals of the district, or is in, names a person, or it says illegal activity, violates federal or state law, and it just gives us the right to remove that comment. Currently, we have comments turned off on Facebook, so people can share, but they can't necessarily comment on our posts because we didn't have a policy, but we've kind of been pretty successful with not having comments
that's
turned
what I was
on.
going to say, because I know when I worked and had a website for my job, I mean, I kept the comments cut off because, I mean, you're inevitable are going to have somebody do that, and if you can't see it, I mean, it may be okay to still have a policy, but I think probably just still to keep the comments turned off.
Well, and each time we do a post, we have to remember to turn those comments off. It's not something that we can do globally. So I did a post a couple of weeks ago and forgot to turn the comments off. We had a couple of comments on it. Unfortunately, my brother is the one that pointed it out to me, that I had forgotten to turn the comments off, and I had to turn the comments off afterwards. So, we tried to do it, but there are going to be times when we are trying to get something out. So that's why we wanted a policy to cover that in that event.
So you're still planning on keeping the, when you
I'm still
remember?
planning to keeping the comments
Okay.
off. It's on my checklist. I haven't
Okay.
forgotten since.
Okay. So you just kind of want this as a safety net?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this for just you who put out posts, or is this for each individual school?
It's
that
for
might put
schools as well.
Everything?
Building level principals are responsible for their content on their sites as well.
Just out of curiosity, do y'all keep your comments cut off, or do people, no, so parents are able to comment on your websites? Do you normally get positive remarks? Okay.
There are some outliers, so we want to make sure.
We have a motion.
Madam Chair, I move we accept policy KDC, district-sponsored information media as first reading.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I bring before you tonight policy KEC for second reading, public concerns and complaints about instructional resources, which should be included in your packet. What questions do you have?
Okay, for the KEC policy, pretty much what I read is, again, coming straight from the model policy and then also from the State Department of Education. And so the KECR, we will discuss that later in your staff reports.
Correct.
See, I didn't jump the gun.
Very good.
I have that question too.
Any questions about KEC?
Well, I have a question. Identifying, it's in the first paragraph, 3/4 of the way down, the complaint may request that no, it's the line up, to seek review of specifically identified existing instructional materials. Now, right here, it only says instructional materials, but in the R policy, it lists library and things. Is instructional materials just to be understood as any?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I move we accept policy KEC, public concerns and complaints about instructional resources for a second reading.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next, we have our continuous improvement turnaround plan from Newberry Middle School. And if you will recall, those of you who were on the board last year, we went through this process for two schools, Newberry Elementary and Newberry High School. So they both were very successful with their plan, and we see no reason that Newberry Middle won't do the same, right, Mr. Reed? All right, so a little bit about their plan. It is based on 3 areas within the school report card accountability system: student progress, and their goal in student progress is to improve progress from 13.13 to 14.74 by having 60% of their students in the 80th band making median annual target, and then 50% of those students making the added value target this year. And that's all based on student progress. So it's based on them going from where they were one year on SC Ready to the next, and having that progress and making those gains. Because it's not just about the score itself at the end of the day, it's about how much that student grew. And that's where one bucket of points in the school report card comes from. Any questions about the student progress piece? For academic achievement, and improve the overall rating in that area from 10.17 to 12.08 by increasing the percentage of students who meet or exceed expectations on SC Ready Math from 14% to 30%. So this one was based on growing the students. Academic achievement is based on where that score lands at the end of when the test is taken. So one's on growth and one's on just raw achievement. And then finally, the multilingual learners, their goal is to improve the rating of multilingual learner progress from 2.11 to 3.16. And this will be done through improving the performance on the access test, which is the assessment that all of our multilingual learners take early when we turn over the new year in 2025. And the greatest area of deficit for those learners, not just at Newberry Middle, but in most places, is speaking and writing. That's what seems to hang our students up the most. The number of students who meet their goal will improve from 20 out of 95 to 30 out of 95. And you can see also included in your packet, but not included on our slides, you see the whole plan that Newberry Middle put together. It was crafted, of course, by the school's leadership team with input from their teachers, as well as School Improvement Council, PTO, and community members. So a lot went into shape this, and we're very proud of the product that they created, and look forward to them executing it with fidelity. What questions do you have?
On the multi-language learners, are y'all getting any kind of feedback from the State Department about whether, I know that the tests that they take, even though they can't read English, speak English, whatever, they take the test in English, is that correct?
Yes, but they do have a year to be able to learn the language once they get here. They don't, if a student comes right now, they're not,
So.
we're not held accountable for their test score in May.
Okay. Are they?
They have time.
Doing anything like making a Spanish version of it, or?
I don't see that
helping?
happening.
No?
Is there an official definition of multilingual learner?
Well, it's evolved over the years. It used to be, back in the day, English language learner, then it was English learner, and last year it is now multilingual learner. So I can't go into the why behind that. We just take our cues from the State Department and do what they say, but that is the new term.
To me, it connotes a learner who is proficient in multiple linguistics, multiple languages, rather than
Right, deficient in one.
what y'all were just talking about.
Right.
Not being proficient specifically in one.
I think maybe it's more of a forward-focused term, so they may not be multilingual yet, but they're on the way, and they're here, and they're learning English day by day, so maybe it's just a very positively phrased acronym.
Was there any of the plans that were done last year, was there any carryover or translation from those into this plan?
I don't know. I would have to ask Mr. Reed. I don't want to put him on the spot, but we love to replicate things that work in this district. So many of the things that he is doing have been done at some of the other schools, but there's unique things he's doing as well, particularly with multilingual learners. He has an after-school program for them that is folded into the Thriving Tigers program, so they're getting instruction from our multilingual learner teachers at that campus as well after school. And there's a lot of other innovative things that he has in his plan as well. Just focusing on the data, that common planning, utilizing the Elevation platform, which was also a theme with our other two plans last year, and making sure our teachers use those strategies that are best practices, not just for our multilingual learners, but really for all learners. Working in conjunction, having his math department work with his after-school program. So there are some unique things in there, but there are some things that are similar, iReady being one of them from the Newberry Elementary plan as well.
Well, from some of those things that you were saying that are happening after school hours, or is it the teachers in the building that are staying extra?
Yes,
Okay.
they are. Yes. And that's in conjunction with their, I believe it's 21st Century School Grant, as well as some Title I funding that's helping with the ML Academy.
We currently have 52 students enrolled in our ML Academy.
I can't hear you.
Yes, sir, Mrs. Gray, that is
He
correct.
currently
We
has
have- I did
52
collaborate
students.
with Ms. Martin, as
Okay.
well as Ms. Dawkins, and fine-tuning our plan. And so, it's like Dr. Carey said, it's been a collaborative effort.
And may I say, I've heard a lot of positive comments with the efforts that Newberry Middle School is making and working on these students. Very positive.
Proud of our faculty and staff and the district office folks that helped me fine-tune this plan. So it's very exciting and looking forward to a growth mindset that knows our students achieve in the schools they need to score.
How much of a hamstring, or how much you get hamstrung by the fact that scores don't come out until October? So then you have to take, I don't remember what the timeline said, but probably spend another month or 6 weeks making the plan. So you're really not into it until November, December, half the year is gone. How much better would it be if results could come out in the summer?
I think that would help a lot.
Well-
Last year, we were at 36, we were right on the line, and we fell 1 point short, and we've got one of the best testing coordinators in the district. She has given me data, our report cards, so I knew from a long duration of time, kind of where we would be an estimator, or where we would be based on the simulator. And again, I want to thank all parties involved. I feel like at this point in time, I wish last year we would put the effort into it we have put into this year. I felt like last year maybe been a little bit different going to that 1 point. But again, just very proud of our faculty, staff, and students. and working very hard. And again, thank you, Dr. Carey, for presenting this evening.
Well, and I just want to add, that data may not publicly be available until October, November, but we have it right after testing. And we have it in very raw form, and then, so we have preliminary data, and then this is where Dr. Roberts works her magic. Then we get updated data from the State Department, because there were some things that changed about a month after we got the initial set of data. She has, you heard Mr. Reed reference a simulator. She has a simulator where she puts every school's data in. So in as early as June and then in July, we can get pretty deep into the data with what we have. We just can't share it with the public because it's embargoed. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes until the public finds out in October.
I just would like, for multiple reasons, I would like that to come out earlier, so that's where I was going with that.
Gotcha.
Department of Education on that one.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I got a car, I can go to Columbia. Just tell me the words to say.
We can help you.
And Mr. Reed, I saw the $10,000 reference for Century Fund, 21st Century Funding. Is there anything right now that you as a principal need from the school board, like a one-time fund or anything that you need?
No, sir, we have several different after-school programs, and excited about every one of them, giving our students the opportunity for growth. And so I think that's what it's all about at any level, is just giving students the opportunities to succeed. And I feel like right now we've got a great plan in effect, and we look forward to implementing with the devil.
And then on that last slide, you'll just see our timeline, and you can see, you know, where we started with the report card release in mid-October, then the distribution of the turnaround template the week after, notification to the school board on the 28th. On November 4th, we did a notification of designation. Then on the 18th, Mr. Reed had his SIC and PTO community meeting and had turnaround plan, shared it and solicited input from those folks, and then he turned it into us on the 4th of December. And then our upcoming events, right now, the 16th, we're submitting it for your approval. And then I'll be back before you January 30th, January 30th, we'll submit it to the State Department. And then post-approval, I'll be back before you at the 30, 60, and 90-day window to give you progress updates on where the school stands on each of these data points. I know that's a lot of information.
Well, it sounds like y'all are on the right track, at least to getting some things done. And so I mean, being able to hear and see is
Yep, that all.
some of my worries.
Yes, yes. I am very optimistic. It's a great plan, and Mr. Reed has been very responsive to making things happen, and it should be a recipe for success.
So don't you need a motion now to make?
Yes, I do.
we approve?
Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we accept the turnaround plan submitted by Dr. Carey for Newberry Middle Schools.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Thank you.
Ms. Dow?
Madam Chair, Mr. Presley, and members of the board, you should have a copy of our November cash flow report, and we'll start with last month's ending balance of $20.2 million, deposits for the month of November of $8 million, and claims of $7.1 million for an ending balance November 30th of $21 million. The next page breaks this down by fund. The general fund, $18.1 million. Federal projects, $2.2 million. EIA funds, $1.5 million. And other state restricted funds of $80,000. Again, an ending balance of $21.1 million. On the following page, we have our cash flow for technology and construction funds. We have an ending balance of $932,374. We did have expenses for the month of November, and that was for an HVAC unit replacement at Newberry Middle School for $24,000, and a new digital display in the multipurpose room at KRC of $6,156. And again, we have an ending balance in those funds of $932,000.
Ms. Dowd, can you
Yes.
tell me the second thing you said, digital way?
Yes, it was a digital display in the multi-purpose room, that big room that they have a lot of meetings in, at KRC, at, over on Kendall Road, the Kendall Road complex. Mhm. Okay. And now, we also have, for your information, our general fund, revenue and expenditure reports. Try to answer any questions you have at this time.
This is not consequential, but what was $38,000 for receipt of insurance proceeds?
That was insurance proceeds from the hurricane. I think that was Newberry L, the damages that we had from Newberry L.
So that goes back in the general fund. Did we pay for those repairs?
Yes, and then we were covered for that amount of money.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Presley, last month, we had some discussion on the use of school and district logos. In your board packet, I found a policy from another state that I kind of added some information to and brought to you just for discussion. I did inquire about the trademark, and that apparently is going to be super expensive. That, just even going through the process and contacting an attorney, the trademark attorneys, apparently I missed my calling. But that's going to be quite extensive and quite expensive for us. And then tonight, I placed at your locations prior to the meeting where I did contact the South Carolina School Boards Association and their response to some policies about district logos and school logos. So their reference is to policy DDB in one of them and another one with school community relations. And then another one had something in an administrative rule. So I just want to give you that information and ask if you provide me some more direction as to where you would like for us to go with our next steps on having something in place.
Now, this may be a dumb question, but with them doing a trademark and a copyright, are those one and the same?
I did not ask that. I asked about it being trademarked.
Okay, because the only reason why I'm asking is because my son had one done in
Okay.
Georgia for his business logo, and
Copyright was not bad.
No.
Okay.
And I don't know that it would be the same here in South Carolina, but that's why I was wondering, do they call it one and the same? Because in, Georgia.
In Georgia, they don't. I can inquire about copywriting versus trademarking.
I thought in the letter that you gave us tonight, it pretty well sums it up when he says they said currently anyone can capture a district's logo from its public website. So I think anything you try to do, that's going to be an uphill battle.
Well, now, I mean, even if you capture it and use it, I mean, I'm just thinking about like the state logos or even like the county logos. Because I remember an instance where somebody had used one of the county logos, and they were asked, or told to take it off the material that they did because, they hadn't gotten permission to do it. So, I mean, again, even, whether we copyright it or whatever, and I'm not talking about even like all the school stuff, because, Bulldogs, you can't really do that. Rebels, you can't do that. Tigers, you can't do that because everybody pretty much, you look online and you get the graphics and everybody uses a lot of the same. And then the same thing even with the Mid-Carolina lettering. I mean, that came from North Carolina's
Right.
logo. But the district logo to me, is different because it is ours. And then, when you put that stamp on there, that people know that it's
It becomes an endorsement almost.
right.
And for that reason, I think we should specifically outline in here something about a prohibition of use with campaign materials. But also, I think we should include in here consequences.
I don't know really that you can do any kind of consequence unless you do it legally. And I mean, at that point, it would take, you'd have to, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would, that would take a full board vote as to whether you're going to go and pursue something. I don't think we can just, let's just say that somebody used it and they put it on a sign and they're selling T-shirts, but they didn't have our permission, but they used the district logo. We can't say we're going to fine you $500 for doing that because they can basically tell you to go jump in the lake. So the only recourse that you would have would seem to me would be legal recourse if you wanted to make a case out of it.
Right. The first thing we would do would just ask them
To not to
remove
use it, yes.
or not to use it, and then we'd have to make a decision from there.
From there, yeah, that's what I would think.
But if it's a political issue, campaign issue, we could report it to the State Ethics Commission.
Correct.
And they came down with a conversation that it was pretty much of a violation, an ethics violation, but because it was within 50 days of the election itself, they could not issue a ruling. They could issue a ruling now, and I think it's different when it's somebody outside the district using our logo for hats or caps or whatever you were talking about before, versus an employee or somebody who's representing the district in a campaign situation. So whether there's something, just because there's nothing in any district's manual with a prohibition does not mean that we cannot put something in our manual.
Because we are prohibited from using resources like computers to design campaign materials. So I would think that it would
In that same-
fall in line.
Well, the biggest thing, for me too on the district is, just putting something there so that somebody can't set up a stand across the road here and sell koozies with the district logo on it. Without having gotten y'all's permission or, working something out. I mean, it's one thing if you work something out, and especially if it's, something that uses our logo in its fundraising, that would be, I would assume, would either go through the DA, the district office or the board to figure out what the compensation would be.
So maybe that piece about the district's logo needs to go on that same form with that elections. I think it was on that elections form where it says you cannot use the school district's copy machine and everything, which is not this policy. I don't have the letter of that policy with me right now, but it may be just something that can be added to that.
And that would be the policy that would state you can't campaign on like school property. Like, yeah.
That policy.
Yeah, I think that would be the place to put that. Just have all that relating to a campaign and.
Yeah, in the same
Yeah,
place.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
same place, on the same policy, yeah.
I'll have to look that one up. I don't have that one with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
It's a K also, but I
Yeah.
don't remember.
I don't remember the name of it.
I'm familiar with it, I just don't have it right here. So for this, are we going to just add that to the campaign policy for that? Or are we going to try to mold out a separate one for use, or are we
I'm
going to use
okay adding it to the
DDB?
campaign policy.
Yes, I think that's the right
That's
place.
what I think too.
Yeah, as far as the political thing, but, I mean, I'd still like to see something in there, like the title that you have, use of district logos, so that, for whatever reason, that if you're using the district logo and you're not the public school, that it at least goes through the district office or somebody, for permission to use it.
We'll take a look at it.
At the bottom, it says individuals wishing to request permission. It says, must provide the following information to the superintendent or his designee for approval.
Right, and this is the policy that I took from another state. There's not one in
Oh,
South
okay.
Carolina that looks like this. So there is no model policy from the School Boards Association for us to go by. This is one that was found from, I think it was North Carolina, excuse me.
Gotcha.
We'll have to tell Ms. Lawrence to see about crafting one that, because I know that just in talking to other school board members in other places, they have had issues come up, and some of them have actually got tied up in legal instances. So just like you were proactive in the, was it K, whatever, DC on the social
Right, the
media?
social
Maybe
media.
we could be proactive
Okay.
on this, as far as just making sure that somebody knows what the right hand, or, that people can't just take the logo and run with it.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so I'll work on this some more and bring it back again in January.
I believe it'd be hard pressed to defend it when you're a public school district. I still think you got a leg to stand on. You could put it in there and make it sound as bad as you want to and maybe intimidate a few people into not using it. But it's not gonna be legal.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, good evening again. Now I'm back to talk about the rule, KECR. And after the last meeting, the direction you all gave me was to go with option one, which was the original model policy. And that included language where the board may establish a committee to review all complaints. The committee will be comprised of at least 3 members of the board and will review all complaints and the challenge material and provide a report and recommendation to the entire board for consideration. So I wanted to draw a distinction between the District Library Advisory Committee and the committee that would evaluate book challenges, because they're different, but they involve a lot of the same members. The purpose of the District Library Advisory Committee is to work regularly and consistently with the District Library Services Supervisor. That person works with other district personnel to develop plans for the school library program in the district. And their objectives are to enhance student learning through integrating information literacy and technology into the curriculum, to integrate the library information resources and services into the district's total instructional program, to assess programming needs and requests, to evaluate the quality and effectiveness of the school library programs in improving student achievement, and then to advocate for school library programs district-wide. And that committee would be one that would meet probably once each semester, once we get it up and running. Some members of the committee, what might that look like? And this is where we talked about a large group. Again, I think I remember Mr. Gray specifically commenting that, that's a lot of people, because it was close to 20. It would include the district lead librarian, district superintendent or designee, 3 school librarians, 1 from each level, 3 principals or assistant principals, a representative from each level, 3 teachers from each 1 from each level, 3 parents, 1 from each level, a high school student, 1 school board member, 1 business partner, and 1 community at large representative. So that's the District Library Advisory Committee. Are there any questions about that committee?
For me, that, just to not get it confused, that the District Library Advisory Committee actually sounds like something that should be going through the district office and not be connected to this KECR policy.
Well, and it probably won't based on the nature of the complaint, but it includes a lot of the same types of people. So I
Right,
wanted
but
to
I
make
mean-
sure you understood the difference, because I think when I had initially presented it, I think there was some confusion that this would be the group that would evaluate a book challenge, and that is not the case.
Right, well, I guess is what I'm trying to do is to distinguish it so that people understand that the committee that you're talking about has nothing to do with the KEC.
Right, this does not,
committee.
right,
That this is something that is really
Within.
Right.
through the district office, that the
Correct.
district office handles.
correct.
And this committee, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Carey, that committee that right there, the District Advisory Committee, would be making sure that as a district, we're complying with everything that the State Department is now.
Correct.
Right.
And other things as well. They may make budget and staffing recommendations. They may make recommendations on, which provider we use, whether that's Follett or something else. I mean, things of that nature, and just the program in general. And so I wanted to make sure there was a difference between those two, because I feel like when I presented it initially in June, there was some confusion. So that's my objective, is to clear that up.
So this is not a committee that's in place right now?
Correct.
And why would this not have been in place Or are you only putting it in place because of what's come down the pike with KECR?
No, this was a recommendation from the state library standards that came out last spring, and this was something that our lead librarian suggested to me. All right, moving on to book challenges. So looking at what a committee that is dealing with that could look like. So these are the proposed members of the evaluating committee, and some of them can be pulled from the district library committee. Of course, the district lead librarian would be one of those folks, but the rest of the members would be, it would apply to wherever the school, the complaint originated from. So it would be a librarian from that school, a principal or assistant principal from that school, a teacher from that school, a parent from that school. If it's a high school challenge, it would be a high school student from that school. If it's an elementary or a middle school challenge, it would be a school improvement council member. And the reason that that person has been added is because if we did not have, if it was an elementary or a middle challenge and we didn't have a student, because I don't believe it's appropriate for an elementary or middle level student to be on that committee, to keep it an odd number, which was one of the suggestions the board made last month, we needed to add somebody else. And so it made sense to add a school improvement council member and then 3 school board members. So what does that look?
I have a question for
Yes.
that. Could you remind me as to why we do, at the high school level, even have a student?
Just to have student voice. We feel like it's important for the student to make their, make their voice heard and be there to provide their input. We have a forum for them to do that at the district office throughout the year, like we do for our teachers and support staff. And we believe it's important to honor that student voice. And that was one of the suggestions from the school library supervisors group as well.
Do you feel they're mature enough to handle?
We're asking them to read some book. They should be mature enough to be on that. I personally don't have a problem with it.
Well, it would have to be, there would definitely need to be conversation with the principal about choosing a student with the right maturity level. Having been a parent, I could say I may have 2 students who would be mature enough for that and probably one who isn't. So I think it depends on the student. I think it depends on their age and grade, preferably, I would say a junior or a senior. So, we need to use some common sense with that.
Yeah, because you wouldn't normally include a student in making any type of, decisions that as far as that would be, more of an adult decision or, parental decision or.
I do believe there needs to be parents. I mean, I think backing up to just KECR, as the policy says, there are your, and I just mean general your, not you particularly, there are those suggestions, and then there are suggestions that I saw at different groupings at the different schools, districts and whatnot. And the three board members, a school improvement person, 1 person, or 2 parents, a principal or an AP. I mean, because by the time they get to KECR in our district, they should have, I mean, one of the directives is that the parent who has a complaint has had to go through the district, or through the school itself. So I would presume by the time it got to a board or this particular committee, I don't know that you need a teacher and an assistant principal and a library person, because it seems to me it would have already gone through them to get to us, and this might just give an opportunity for a different voice.
Well, it would have gone through them in that they would have had a conversation with the parent about, okay, you have an issue with this book, what can we do to resolve that? Would it be enough for your student to not have access to the book, and work through it in that manner, because that group can't unilaterally make a decision to remove a book. This group can make that recommendation, but a teacher, a librarian, and a principal or assistant principal don't have that authority. They can try to get the parent to a good place so the challenge doesn't move forward, but if the parent is adamant that they want it not removed just for their student, but all students, then that's where this group comes in.
Yeah, because we're going to have to make sure that when it goes at a building level thing and somebody has a complaint, that, and I think you had it in the KCE policy or either the KCR, where even before it gets to the book committee, that a parent's going to have made every good faith effort in order to go through the proper channels before it gets there.
Right.
But I'm kind of like Ms. Berger. I mean, for me, you know, looking at the committees there, I had one elementary or middle level librarian, one principal or assistant principal, one teacher, two parent, and the one SIC member and 3 school board members.
Okay, so you're moving on to, let's see, so
Just
to
the
this
committee.
example right here.
The committee makeup, yeah. That I wouldn't put the district lead librarian in a local book challenge. You're already going to have her on your library advisory clinic. I would do the one elementary or middle level librarian. I would do the one elementary or middle level principal. I would do the teacher. I would do 2 parents. And then if you want to bring in the SIC member, you know, or PTO or whatever, and then I would do the 3 school board members.
Yeah, that's 9.
So you'd have 3 parents.
2 parents.
Right. Well, if she's an SIC member, you're going to have 3
Oh,
parents.
okay.
Right.
Right.
Well, an SIC member could be, it could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be a community member.
Well, that's true. That's right. That's
Right.
right, yeah. That still would be.
Right, so that would be 9 members. If you had one elementary level librarian, one principal or assistant principal, one elementary middle level teacher, 2 parents, one SIC member, and 3 school board members.
Yeah, that makes 9.
So am I hearing you all want me to remove the district lead librarian and make that a parent instead, based on whatever level the complaint originates?
I think so, because that's a lot anyway, if you, yeah, that could be a lot.
That's what I wrote on my little note.
Well, it would still be 9.
Right.
No,
Oh,
no,
oh.
I mean, a lot of responsibility on that district lead
Okay.
librarian all the time.
Okay.
There's a lot of other responsibilities as well. I don't think they need to be on that.
Take the district lead
That was what
off
I did at home when I struck it, yeah.
and just put 2
2 parents.
Okay.
2 parents.
Okay.
That's what I got, yeah.
And what about the high school one?
So I just want to make sure, I haven't heard from every board member, so everybody's good with this? It's not an action item, but I want to make sure that I'm doing what everybody wants. So this is speak now.
Well, I would say that, I mean, for me, you know, you heard what mine is, so I don't think I
Right,
have to
right.
read it.
I just haven't heard from Ms. Shannon, Mr. Bledsoe, or Mr. Gray, so I just want to be 100% sure. I'm not excluding them.
That's pretty much what I call them makeup, because I think if you say 3 board members, they don't have to be the same 3 all the time. It could happen any time of the year. I think putting age-appropriate principals and teachers is a big part of it, so I'm in agreement with that. I had a concern now, are we doing anything, there was something tied to this when it came out about teachers having to label books in the classroom. Are we as a district doing any of that?
We have guidance from the state, Mr. Bledsoe,
Okay.
upon request. If someone requests that information, we would have to provide it. You have some districts that have made teachers catalog their
Yeah.
entire classroom.
I think
We-
that's ridiculous.
It is.
On the
Yeah,
record,
too.
that
we-
is ridiculous.
We,
Yep,
we did not do that.
I know that.
But if it is requested, we would have to fulfill that request.
Ms. Templin wants to ride to Columbia with me, I believe.
Yeah, I do.
Well, some
As a
teachers
person that had 8,472,562 books in my room, and I have even heard of teachers covering up bookshelves so they don't have to comply with that, and they say, we just don't have any. So that is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That is ridiculous, and if that's the intent of this law, I will ride to Columbia.
Well, I would think if you're going to have the library advisory council.
Exactly.
And if part of their goal is to make sure that we're all adhering to that, I would think that would be, because I know you don't want to get in trouble any more than we do, or Mr. Presley does, you know, because it.
No, and then one thing I think it's important to note, because the state has already removed I believe, 7+ books, and the state board has already voted on that. Not only did we make sure that we pulled those from our libraries, we did send notice to all the principals and librarians to make sure the teachers who may have had those texts, or not texts, but novels in their classroom, that they pulled those as well. So we are complying with that. But like Mr. Presley said, we saw no need to go ahead and have teachers catalog all of their books until it was requested of us.
I really disagree with that. I don't think a classroom teacher should ever have to do anything like
Right.
that when they've accumulated books. And I think that something like this, I hope is going to be the exception and not the rule. We have
Yep.
not had that many problems.
Right.
And so I think we're making a big deal out of it. I hope we never have to use it.
Right, well, let me just make sure we're good with the high school challenge. So the same thing, remove the district lead librarian and replace that with a parent. So we'd have a high school librarian, high school principal or AP, high school teacher, 2 high school parents, high school student, 3 school board members.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw this out about a high school student, is, just say that the student, decides that they don't think that that book belongs in there. I don't know that we're not necessarily putting undue peer pressure on a high school student, that if, 20 other students like that book, that, it's like, oh, man, what'd you do? Or, I mean, kids in high school can be very cruel. And so I don't know that it would be something that would be shared with the public, though, how that vote comes out. There's 9 people, so if that student. It wouldn't be shared with the public, but the public's going to know.
Right.
Who the student is on there. Because
Right.
if they asked, you'd have to give them that information.
But they wouldn't know how the student voted.
No, they wouldn't. But I guess is what I'm saying is if the vote, I don't know. I just,
No,
I think about the peer pressure.
Well,
guess.
I don't know, I think a lot of our students, and we're raising them to be self-sufficient in a world that's changing very quickly and rapidly and not easy. What a life skill to be able to sit in on that and do that. But they have to be willing to do so, too. I would never want a student to feel like they're pressured to even be on the committee. But we'll do what you all think is best.
I think it would be a miscarriage not to have a student on this committee. This is all about students, and we've got to give them a voice in what we do and the decisions we make. Maybe it's only one, but I can go over to Newberry High School down in Mid-Carolina or up to Whitmire and pick out at least 3 or 4 students that I know who would serve on this committee well. So I strongly encourage you to leave that student on that committee.
I'm not going to fight you on it, if that's what you think. I mean, if that's what the majority, I was just thinking out loud, as far as the peer pressure and all of that, but,
Well, when it comes to the decision of the suggested format for reporting, which the board will have to report, lists committee members and their positions, statement ensuring everyone has read the book in its entirety, list of review sources, statement of majority opinion, and committee's final decision. So there is no transparency as to how they voted.
no, I know
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I didn't doubt that.
I don't have an issue with a high school student being on there. That's no problem with me. And I really don't have a problem with the district lead librarian being on there. I mean, to me, you need a lead person like that on the committee.
Well, in the high school, actually, the district lead librarian and the high school librarian is the same, isn't it?
Well, not necessarily. It could be the
Yeah,
same.
Yeah, okay.
Could be the
Yeah,
same, yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
If you say
Depending on where the complaint originates from,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Because when
you're
you
right.
say a district, that's, could be
No,
anybody.
you're right. I got
Yeah.
it. I was mistaken.
Yeah, so I don't have an issue with the district lead librarian being on the committee. And I think one parent is sufficient.
So if you want to go through the line to see what you.
I really don't, Ms. Lake. I really want you all to come to consensus on your own. I don't want to sway anything one way or the other. This is your rule.
I like the way we said it a while ago, but I agree with Mr. Gray. I think it's a good idea if we can find a high school student when we're reviewing a high school board.
Well, then it sounds like to me that everybody you know, the majority of what I'm hearing is still taking off the district leave, and then,
Placing that with the parent, and everything else stays the same.
Right, yep.
Okay.
The only little bit of a concern I would have is that we need to be sure that we are conscious about who we populate the book committee with based on who is on the library committee, because we wouldn't want to put the same folks, because then we basically have
Same people.
Redundant.
same perspectives.
Right, yeah, I agree.
So just be kind of conscious of that as you populate the two.
And it may be beneficial to have, if it's gone through the school already, you will have used that librarian. So to have, if it comes this far, to have a librarian from a different school.
Well, the school won't be vetting the challenge themselves. Once the school has had an opportunity to work through the issue with the parent to resolve it without going this route, then it comes to this group, and that's going to be based on the folks from that school where the complaint originated.
well, we're going to put the pressure back on you and just make sure that the district advisory committee, you know, screens all the books, and then we won't have to worry about it, and nobody will ever have to.
Well, I don't believe screening books is one of their responsibilities, but
Well,
I
mean, you know
understand
what
where
it
you're coming
is.
from, yes.
Yeah, that you're making sure that we are adhering to the standards of the state, because really, that's all any of us want to do, is you don't want to get in trouble.
Correct.
So.
Correct. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Mr. Rawls?
They're going to keep the, yeah, they're going to keep the high school students.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Presley, we'll start tonight with the work order summary as presented to you in your packets, showing for the month of November a total of 43 new requests, 325 completed work orders with an average age of 4 days. On the 11th, we were tracking at 177 open work orders with an average age of 53 days. And again, those 53 days on those open work orders, there could be some work orders that were submitted at the beginning of the year that won't get completed until Christmas break, or maybe even lag over into spring break or even next summer. So that's one of the indicators of why those particular work orders have such a high daily average as far as age. Also in that is the last page of each summary, so you can see the totals at the bottom as they're reported on page 1. Moving on to the custodial report cards. I've included all the comments for that, and then they're graded.
Why is Newberry Elementary School not cleaned, is the way I would put it.
We've experienced some staffing issues at Newberry Elementary School.
Because he has not hired the students that Ms. Templin asked him to last time, so they can get him free to the ball games. Have we looked at that in, for real?
We have had some
Because this is
inter-office, conversations.
in our office.
Yeah.
We want some action, see, and they get those passes to go to all these games, and you dangle that carrot before them. But no, for real, I see you do have a problem, but it's not a lot of things solved with them at this, so.
Right.
Well, look at the Career Center.
Well, there's two report cards from the Career Center. One is just reporting on the portable, 2 in the back. Some trash wasn't emptied, so we scored an F for the month.
Let me see it.
The district office and adult education, I mean, those are, if, I don't know what the best way to say it, they skew the scores up quite a bit, because they're always straight A's. Is that because there's a dedicated person there?
Every school has a dedicated person.
They do.
We have three custodians here, a day porter and 2 night cleaners that do a very adequate job of keeping this building clean.
Well, I'd say they do it a lot better than adequate, because it's an A. I'd call adequate a B or a C.
Do we need to rotate who works where, so that at least some of the schools will get cleaned a little bit better each month.
Well, that does sound good, but that group of custodians, a lot of these night cleaners are working a second job as a night cleaner, so it's depending on what part of the community they actually reside in as to where they would be able to report to work.
Newberry Elementary is very close to this district office. I'm standing up for the teachers because I know what they're
Yeah.
dealing with.
Yes, ma'am.
I just stand up for those children, and I love that old school. I was over there 22 years.
Yes, ma'am.
I love that building, and I want to see it taken care of. We renovated it, and I think we need to do better at helping them out, finding someone somewhere, if we all need to take a broom and go over there and help her get that building clean. Ms. Dawkins, I would be willing to help you. I mean it. Done it before.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Earl?
Good evening once again. Before you, I will be sharing information as it relates to Student Services Department. There are 4 documents in the information that you received in your school board packet that I will be covering with you. The first document is the school level hearing office recommendations and suspension report as of December 10th. Before I move forward with this document, I do want to note 3 changes. There were mistakes on, if you look at the second column to the right, a number of incidents resulting in out-of-school suspension. The number reported for Whitmire High School is 48. That should be at 8 and not 48.
Ooh, good.
Mr. Ripple, you can, and then at the bottom, Whitmire Elementary, nothing against you, Mr. Ripple or Mr. Bledsoe, okay, at the bottom, Whitmire Elementary has 37, that should be 7.
Somebody was jacking them up.
Just so you know, the 4 came over from last board reporting, and the 3 came from last board in front of them. So pardon me for that mistake. And one more thing, you getting your math lesson for this evening. At the very bottom where the 432 is on the second column, that should be adjusted to 362. So that would be a total of 432 minus 70. That takes the number down to 362 for the district total. And that number is accumulating throughout the course of the year. So that column, as I continue to report each month, that those numbers, hopefully they won't go up, but they won't go down in terms of that, because those have already been actions that have taken place at the school. And once again, those are incidents resulting in suspension. That could be one incident with multiple students, but that is one particular incident with that. If you look, going back to the first column, number of students recommended to the hearing office, that is broken down by each school. At the elementary, middle, and high school, we do have an evening school program for elementary students. They do not attend the alternative school. And if you look at the very bottom of that first column, the number is 50. So that's the total number of students that have been recommended at some point in time this year from each individual school. On your second document, this is the total number of students recommended to the hearing office per month. Document before that had each school. This one has per month. And so if you look, the total, once again, is 50 recommendations either at the elementary or secondary level to an alternative placement, to the hearing office, and those numbers are represented by each month. The next document looks at our truancy numbers for our students. We do have that information broken down for you in the first column. It is by each school and the number of students that were categorized as being truant as of December the 10th. If you look at the very bottom of the first column, that number 345, that is the total number of students that were categorized being truant as of December 10th. And then on the second column is the total enrollment for the students at each particular site, elementary, middle, and high. And then at the very bottom of that column is the total number that is excluding pre-K students in that total. And then the very last page, this has the number of students enrolled at NAS or evening school as of December 10th. Once again, it's broken down by elementary, middle, and high school, and that's the total number of students that are currently enrolled for each school. Right now, the total is 53, looking at our elementary, evening school program as well as our secondary alternative school program. At this time, I'll try my best to answer any questions you may have related to the information I presented.
What's the capacity at NOS?
That's kind of hard to say in terms of the programs that we have. So it's not like, we can service at least 100 kids, 80 to 100 kids, I would say. And that's roughly off the top of my head, thinking about the setup that we have.
Is there an average stay there?
It depends upon the nature of the infraction. Sometimes if our students are been placed at NOS and they're receiving special services, they have a limited number of days that they can attend. But it just depends upon the nature of the infraction, if the students have multiple violations or, whatever it is. So, no, there's not like an average for everyone, like I said.
Your kids that, the elementary kids that go to the evening school, are they transported there by parents?
Yes, the parents transport them.
Where are we doing, I've forgotten where we're doing the after-school program for the elementary kids? Because I know you
Newberry
said Newberry L, okay,
That's where we're housing it at.
okay. Because you said all of them go to one
Correct.
place now.
We've done it down to one site now.
And so like right now, it's showing 3 students. So do we have 3 teachers?
No, we have
Just what, 2?
2 teachers.
2 teachers, right?
That's correct. If no one has any other questions, I did want to add that the Student Services Department was excited with the fact that we were awarded a $35,000 grant to support our McKinney-Vento students, as well as our unaccompanied youth. So we did receive that funding. I believe it's a 2-year grant, and we're expecting to get additional funding after year 1. So we're excited about that, to assist with our students and families that are less fortunate and have some challenges that we may not be aware of.
And then kind of what do you do with the money? I mean, do you help them like with hotel rooms or lodging, clothing?
Yeah, it could be hotel, lodging, like you just stated, personal products, transportation. We actually did a summer program the last 2 years with students who took them on a field trip as well, so we're putting towards that.
Do you know without looking how many students we classify as homeless now?
I believe we're right at 100, close to 100 in terms of that. And one of the things through the registration process we've done is we've been identifying more families. Sometimes families are not aware of the resource that they have, so we've been pulling them in when to find out a little more about their personal situation. No one has any other questions? That's all I have.
Well, congratulations on getting the grant.
Yes.
Yep.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Presley?
Madam Chair, members of the board, community members that are present this evening, and those that are watching online. My report will be brief this evening. Excuse me. Whew. My report will be brief this evening. Recently, we had the pleasure of attending the South Carolina School Board Association, their legislative advocacy conference on December the 7th and the 8th. I think all of the board members attended and really walked away from that conference with a lot of information. Is there anything that any of the board members would like to share from your experience on December the 7th and the 8th?
Well, I know it was stressed, oh, go ahead.
No, you started first.
That some of the legislators came and spoke, and of course, they're talking about funding going for another teacher's pay raise. And so it was expressed by several school board members, including myself, that when you raise it, help us to be able to pay for it. 2, when you raise it, Don't raise it just for our beginning teachers, because last year it was such a big gap, and it left us scrambling, trying to make sure that we could provide for everybody. In the way that the scale was set up last year, and I don't know if this is true, and you probably looked at it even closer than I did, but it almost appeared that the more experience you had and the more education you had, the more you got penalized instead of being rewarded for it. And so, like I said, we cornered some of the legislators after they finished talking and just asked them to please to consider that, just making sure that when they put these raises, I mean, that's great to move our teachers or to want to move the beginning ones to 50,000, but don't forget about the teachers that have been there for years.
Couple of things that I jotted down when the state superintendent was speaking. She mentioned value-added measures and third grade retention law and the SDE strategic plan. Could we get a little infographic on some of those next time?
You sure can.
One of the legislators who was speaking wants to do away with some of the extra professional development for teachers. So we'll be looking to see how far that goes. There was also a discussion with the legislative panel about partisan elections for board members, because that has come up occasionally here and there, but he says right now there's no appetite for that in the Senate. So I'm happy about that. I think school board should be about managing a district and not worrying about what party you're in. There were a couple of things when we got into the delegate assembly that I thought were interesting. Not going to go through all 35 resolutions, but there was a topic, a resolution about increases, and I think you touched on it, Ms. Lake, about increases for teacher salaries. There was also a resolution that was voted down about board members bringing lawsuits against boards. And I thought it was interesting that that was left open. And there are some specific situations that it can be done and some that it can't, but I thought it was interesting that that would be left open to allow for that to happen by that board, because by that body. But it was pretty interesting going through that process. So I enjoyed it. Thank you for making me go, Ms. Metz.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Mr. Gray. Sometimes it's not too enjoyable.
And I want to say that it was a learning experience for me. It was long, but interesting.
Oh, good.
I mean, it was interesting.
Other thing, there's 125 pre-filed bills, and the major issues coming up is going to be vouchers. That's been a personal fight of mine for many years. I have taken on that cause, and they said they're really going to fight for it this new legislative session. So it's going to take a lot of people to let them know in Columbia what we want, and it's strong. We need a strong public education here, that dollars are not being sent to private schools, in my opinion, and we're going to record for that. And we're going to stand up and fight.
Yeah, and just, I'm going to add to that, because one of the discussions on vouchers for y'all to know is that it was voted down by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional because it goes against the Constitution of South Carolina. So the only way to change it is to make it a referendum and for the people to vote on it. And so they're not going to make it a referendum. It's what they're trying to do is kind of backdoor it, going back to the tax credits and that type of thing for, people to contribute to, and then people being able to claim, and then, the tax thing, kind of like they did 2 or 3 years ago. So they're kind of backdooring it so that they can kind of keep it in place until they can figure out another way to get around, either to get around the Constitution or to figure out whether they have enough support in the public to make it a referendum. Right now, they don't feel like they do, so I would encourage all of y'all to make sure you let your legislators know that this isn't anything that you want. I would kind of keep the heat on them, because that's the only thing right now that's stopping it from going to a referendum, is that when they got to talking about it, a lot of them are saying that they don't have their constituency there in order to be able to support it. So keep up the pressure there.
All right.
There were two things also that I wanted to mention. Starting on Saturday morning with the superintendent of education, she mentioned mental health for students. And that topic came up in several of the presentations or discussions. She referenced there being 1,000 students per clinician in South Carolina. The American School Counselor Association recommends 250 per student. So right now, we're 4 times greater in that ratio of students to counselors. So I look forward to some ways to lower that number so that we can address mental health issues with our students. And also, she mentioned a mobile STEM lab, which I thought was pretty cool. I want to drive the truck if you can make that happen.
Understood.
And I want to mention that she highlighted Reuben Elementary and Kelly Folk, and so kudos to the school, to everyone at that school. It was nice to hear Newberry called out on the floor there.
So we all walked away with a wealth of knowledge and how we're going to move forward. Additional announcements, December the 20th is the last day for our students, and we will go on winter break starting on the 21st of December. I want to give a message to everyone, all of the employees that are listening right now, that are here. Please get rest, relax, spend time with your family and your loved ones, recharge. We've put in a lot of hard work, and our hard work is paying off, it's showing. And I just want to congratulate the staff, the faculty, the staff of our district, because you're doing an excellent job and the results are showing. We will have January the 3rd, our teachers will return for planning and preparation day. That will be a work day, and we'll do a little bit of PD for our leads. And then we have our legislative breakfast, and it will also be a called board meeting as well, because we will have a quorum. That will be January the 10th from 8:30 until 10:30. That's the assigned time as of now. But other than that, thank you for all that you're doing. We're halfway through the year. So we're almost 90 days in, 90 more to go. But just thank you for your hard work and dedication for our students each and every day. Thank you.
And I want to thank the students for the little presents that they gave the board in the back room, which you didn't see, but explain where they came from, because they're exciting.
Ms. Holliday, I'm gonna put you back on the spot. They were actually little Christmas trees. And what class was that, Ms. Holliday?
It's our mechatronics and electricity class.
All right, so the little Christmas trees are little circuits, and they light up and they flash and do all kind of little things. So our students from the Career Center not only gave them little Christmas trees, but they also gave them poinsettias as well.
Merry Christmas to you all. Take a nice break.
I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Second. All those in favor? We're adjourned.